What on earth is this? I mean, it tells us right up in the top right-hand corner of the sky, Boston in 2076, just in case anyone down below forgot what city they were in or what year it was. But what is all of this? It's concept art meant to depict an American city many of us are familiar with. We might not know exactly what it looks like, but we know that if something like this actually existed, we sure as hell would have seen a lot more of it by now. This isn't the Boston of real life. It's not even the one we got in Fallout 4. It is concept art, after all. Just a concept, but it's a captivating one. It is a picture, but it's more than a picture. It's a scene, a glimpse into that oh-so-alluring but inaccessible pre-war. That pre-war that we only really get to look at by making sense of what remains. The people down below and the cars that they're driving look like ants next to the megastructures around them. It appears to be the middle of the day, but streetlights and headlights are glowing, perhaps because there's so much above them, a double-decker highway and strangely shaped skyscrapers, it blocks out the sun. Despite this, trees manage to poke through, not like weeds through a crack in the sidewalk, but a garden given its space and told when and where to stop. Neon advertisements modestly share space. They're not dominating the city in a cyberpunk dystopia, just providing a subtle accent to the real star of this show. Right, this city isn't dominated by advertisements trying to sell you a product. It's illuminated by architecture trying to sell you a dream. At the center rises a magnificent hybrid, Art Deco ambition fused with neo-Gothic ornament, a skyscraper built as a temple to modernity. Tiered, angular, symmetrical, opulent, it's one of a kind. And I mean that specifically for this image, truly the only one surrounded in a sea of something else. This is Art Deco. We've discussed its relevance to Fallout before, but today we're here to talk about something else. We're here to talk about this sea surrounding the Art Deco tower in the center. It's hard not to, but notice its neighbors. Angled instead of angular, exaggerated instead of monumental, whimsical instead of serious, motion and spectacle instead of power and stability. This building over here, with a projection of a woman unfazed by an alarmed robot, its roof containing an indoor park. Man doesn't need nature anymore, it incubates it for pleasure and puts it in a safe little bowl like a pet goldfish. Antennas stab into the sky from every building pointing to the beyond. How much of these towers are even usable? Who knows and who cares? They weren't built to be used, they were built to be seen. These are the very buildings that give Fallout 4's Boston Commonwealth its personality, for better or for worse. They attempt the retro-futuristic architectural style known as googie. No, I'm not a toddler trying to pronounce a search engine. I'm a toddler trying to learn a bit about architecture in an effort to further understand Fallout. Googie acquired its name in a strange way. It wasn't bestowed upon the style like a gift from the heavens, it was dumped on it like a bucket full of shame, but like anyone or anything with a little bit of perseverance, it owned up to what it was and wore that shame like a suit of armor. Googie didn't rise to prominence in Boston, but rather on the other side of the country in Los Angeles, beginning in, or perhaps on, a coffee shop named Googie. It was the owner's wife's nickname. The odd thing about Fallout 4's Skyscrapers, and they are odd, is that they use something of this googie architecture. But I can't say this with absolute certainty because if you Google googie, you're not likely to find many images of skyscrapers. Instead, you're more likely to find diners, gas stations, fast food restaurants, houses, motels, car washes, coffee shops, and... oh, okay, but wait. There's something familiar, but it's not Boston, that's Vegas. And you might see that building and think of the Lucky 38, but it's the Strat. It's not like the buildings in the background, the rest of the Skyline. Again, we have a unique tower sat in the center of the frame. This time, Googie takes that spot though. Notice that there's so much height, but so little function. It looks like they could have just cut off the entire base of this thing and placed the saucer top on the ground floor. Why put it up so high? Well, to be looked at, of course. It's not a building to be filled with people and offices, it's a structure made for people who want to go to the top. At least that's what it tells you, but really, again, it's made to be looked at, and that's what googie architecture is all about. The diners, gas stations, and coffee shops that lined the streets of LA's roadways wanted to be seen, and because we had entered an age of suburbanites having their own personal automobile, these buildings needed to stand out and be seen through a car windshield while it moved 40 miles per hour down the road. That is exactly why most of our reference material about googie is from these low-down-to-the-ground businesses. We don't see cities full of googie skyscrapers, not in our world at least, but we do in the Boston of 2076. That's what makes Fallout 4 a bit jarring. Googie evokes the imagery of air travel, space travel, stars, and atomic energy. That's why the mascot for Nuka-Cola wears a naughty little spacesuit and Jangles the Moon Monkey squeezes into something similar. That's why when we look at the Starlight Drive-In, like many other structures in-game, we see sides that look like the wings of a plane, and a roof topped with a flying saucer. Starlight is the name intentionally, and a star is placed right above the logo to complete the branding. Red Rocket wasn't a random idea, it was totally googie, my doogie. Even when you spin the thing above that little brat's crib, it's rocket ships. At the Boston airport, the air traffic control tower is almost directly pulling from the LAX theme building, which is googie. See the resemblance? This is what the real Boston Airport Tower looks like. We can also see the relevance of the burgeoning technology in robotics, not only throughout the game, but in the advertisements placed throughout the world space. And you know what else we can see in at least one of those advertisements is that original concept art of Boston. It's faintly in the background of one of these red rocket signs. Many people didn't love googie. It had a nostalgic resurgence that prevented, or at least slowed down, its destruction over the decades, but it makes sense why so many people criticize this look on Fallout 4's buildings today. Tell me, what comes to mind when you think of the Commonwealth's colorful skyline? Do you think tacky, superficial, unrealistic, commercialized, cheap-looking, shallow, unserious, overindulgent, disposable, cartoonish, plastic, and plastic? Yeah, those are all adjectives that have been aimed at googie itself long before Fallout 4 was ever conceived. Art Deco was a testament to human excellence and permanence, while googie was a billboard disguised as a building, doing whatever it took to get your attention shamelessly, and a lot of critics hated it for that. But are humans excellent? Sometimes. Are we permanent? Never. Art Deco is idealistic, and so is googie to an extent, but which one is more honest? I'll leave that for you to decide. I don't think the answer is so clear. Mass Fusion, Trinity Tower, Hub 360, the Dartmouth Professional Building, Pinnacle High Rise, Mass Bay Medical Center. We still have an Art Deco remnant here and there, but these googies tower over those relics of the past. We've never really seen something like this brought to life in a Fallout game before. No other city shares this imagery. New Vegas has the Lucky 38 inspired by the Strat, and just like the Strat, it stands out among the other buildings. Fallout 3's Washington, D.C. deliberately avoids skyscrapers altogether, just like the real city with its strict height limits. Instead, it leans on neoclassical monuments and brutalist federal blocks. It has a tinge of retro-future strangeness, but Fallout 4 is the clear outlier, the only game that gives us a forest of strange, retro-futurist towers. So what's behind these googie goofy goober skyscrapers? Trinity Tower in the Back Bay is the tallest of them all, noted to be 30 stories worth of super mutant-sized office space. We can see on some concept art, the building has written on its side, "Live at Work." Perhaps it's just fading from time, but it almost looks like this was added after the war. But who's left with enough passion for anti-corporate slogans given the circumstances? Maybe the super mutants are just tired of packing gore bags and yanking rusty nails out of their asses for minimum wage. The concept art also displays premium workspaces listed on the side of the building, so it's fairly safe to assume that this was a large tower full of corporate offices. What is Trinity, though? Is this some obscure pre-war corporation we're being introduced to in Fallout 4? No, it doesn't really seem so. There is a real-world Trinity Tower in Trinity Place condominiums, but they share little in the way of resemblance. Perhaps Trinity Tower stands as a visual juxtaposition to the famous Trinity Church, which does actually exist, and they sit right next to each other in-game. Church versus skyscraper, sacred temple versus corporate spectacle. Not far from either of those is the Dartmouth Professional Building and its nameless pal leaning on it in a time of need. In a tragic and poetic way, we have two skyscrapers right next to each other, yet there is only one ground floor level between them. Within that single room is a line of chalk drawn to split the room into two sections with a sleeping bag on each end. I'm resisting the urge to go off script on some weird tangent about skyscrapers and video games and all the unused potential space of a building where you only get access to a couple floors at most, let alone in this instance where we only get one, but we have two enormous towers that could hold hundreds if not thousands of people before the war, in theory at least, now reduced to a single room where two people were struggling for personal space. The Dartmouth name comes from the real-world street that this tower sits on. The most iconic building in Fallout 4's Skyline, the Mass Fusion Building. Among all of the towers, this one feels the most googie, a pure product of the atomic age, an era obsessed with spectacle. Inside the lobby stands a statue dedicated to fusion, the same imagery we see in the concept arts park beneath that deco tower. Perhaps that was meant to be the original Mass Fusion Building. It's a unique design, no doubt, almost alien, but not entirely without precedent. The Torre Velasca in Milan, Italy shares its mushroom silhouette, a narrow stem supporting a massive flared crown, and given mass fusion's role in nuclear power, that mushroom shape might not be accidental. It could be a quiet foreshadowing of what was to come. Mushroom clouds. That's all well and good, but what is mass fusion? We found that the Trinity of Trinity Tower wasn't much of a corporation, but a reference to Boston. Same with Dartmouth. So is mass fusion just fusion for Massachusetts? Sort of, but there's more to this building. This story begins with the pre-war titan of Poseidon Energy, which was more than a single company. In truth, it was a dominant conglomerate that had its fingers in all things related to resources and had a major part in the resource wars that were going on across the world. They employed a bright and ambitious scientist by the name of Carl Oslo. After years of working for Poseidon, Carl decided he had had enough. The moral weight of his work being used by a megacorporation with ties to the military was too much for him. He was passionate about his work, but that work was being used to harm people, so he left and formed his own company. His new business would be clean of this moral weight, so why not have this clean company make clean energy and have that clean energy go to civilians? Now, instead of working for a company that hurt people, he would lead a company that helped them. Carl was a moral and ambitious scientist, but his ambition took the reins of his nuclear horse and left his morals dragging behind him like a fool tied at the feet. His position changed from engineer to founder. He had a stake in this energy game like never before. He was competing in a cutthroat industry, and cutthroats cut corners. Mass fusion hit the ground running. They accomplished clean energy, but it wasn't fusion or clean. It was fission and dirty. Fission is the process of splitting, whereas fusion is about joining. Fission is also what Carl's ambition and morality were doing, crashing into each other and splitting him into parts, forcing him to follow one over the other. He was still in the corporate rat race, now just playing with much higher stakes. His products were releasing to the public, but they had insufficient shielding, and this was exposing those civilians he sought to help to cancerous radiation poisoning. Again, his morals that split him from Poseidon Energy now had to split from mass fusion. His company denies the accusations despite their truth, and they dangerously push forward towards greater progress. Carl is holding on to those morals by a thread as time goes on, but he still wants to fuse them with his ambitions. Now that he dominates the energy market in Massachusetts, he can begin to work on that clean energy in Mass Fusion's Clean Power Initiative. How corporate of him. In the meantime, he would continue to dump radioactive waste all over the Commonwealth and hide it. His products would continue to poison the public and he would deny it. Work on this Clean Power Initiative would commence with Carl and his partner Noel Shandrick. They aimed to create a clean fusion reactor that would not only provide energy to Massachusetts, but also provide mass fusion with that opportunity to stop lying and killing people. While Carl and his team are trying to rebalance morals with ambition, the rest of the world is tilting wildly out of control. The European Commonwealth has invaded the Middle East. The US is engaged in war with China and invaded its neighbors of Mexico and Canada. There's a worldwide scramble going on to grab what's left, but if Carl and mass fusion can figure out this energy crisis, perhaps they hold the key to ending these conflicts. Carl is, at this point, a titan of industry. His company is interlinked with the United States, and no matter how poorly, he aims to serve the American people first, and he wants to undo his shortcomings tenfold. Try and get into the mind of Carl here. He's been swayed by the state of the world and his moral failures stacking up in front of him. In this process, his values are under the most intense scrutiny of his life. He has allowed his judgment to be shaped by the ideals of his time period. The world is at war, and patriotism and nationalism easily slip into jingoism. This is aggressive warlike policy, and in a country dominated by megacorps, that doesn't just apply to government actions. Now, his company, Mass Fusion, is taking military contracts to benefit the US. He created Mass Fusion to distance himself from Poseidon Energy because of this very reason. He has become what he sought to destroy. Carl's partner Noel is now assuming the role that Carl used to at Poseidon. He opposes Carl's dealings with the military, but Carl feels justified in his actions. Or perhaps he has forced a narrative in his mind that what he does is for the greater good as a way of coping with losing his identity. Despite their friction, Mass Fusion finally achieves clean fusion. And what does Carl do? He sends it straight to Washington, straight into the hands of the military. Noel doesn't get a chance to split on his own terms because Carl forces him to sign a non-compete, freezes his pension, and fires him. Carl knows the threat he posed to Poseidon upon his exit. Somewhere deep down, Carl knows he wears the other shoes this time. He is Poseidon and Noel is what Carl once was. To complete the cycle, Poseidon Energy begins the process of buying out Mass Fusion. Carl simply jumped ship just to be scooped up after all the hard work was done and costly mistakes were made. We all know where this story goes, though. The cycle doesn't get completed because the wheel is broken. The Great War takes place a couple of months later, and none of this comes to fruition. Perhaps not directly, but in the end, the only fusion energy Carl helped bring to the world came in the form of destruction, leaving his temple of creation standing in a pile of rubble. Hub 360, Pinnacle High Rise, Windbrisk Heights listed simply as ruined skyscraper, and an array of other towers connected into a megastructure lining the streets. I created a map that places a dot on almost every one of these googie or googie-like plastic retro-futuristic structures in the Boston Commonwealth. There are tons, and I'm sure I missed quite a few in my search. I think I got the largest and most relevant though. It's not so much the number of them, but perhaps how they are incorporated into the world that makes them feel out of place. Let's take another look at that concept art. What do you notice about it that isn't consistent with the Boston we were given in Fallout 4? That's exactly it. Consistency. This Boston shown in 2076 shows us a Boston that has been transformed, entirely adopting its retro-futuristic aesthetic. It doesn't take a half measure, it dunks itself all the way into that googie bucket of shame and embraces it in full. Whatever colonial city Boston thought it was has been tossed aside. It makes me think we could have seen some abomination of neo-colonial googie, a Boston that still carried a ghost of its old identity under that plastic. But instead we got an odd mix of brick brown and colorful but faded plastic, a transition stuck in time. Compared to the Boston we got, the one shown in this concept art looks like the final product after 100 more years of development. We were left in the awkward adolescence growth phase, pimples and all, a fusion yet to come. There's barely a blend of colonial and googie in Fallout 4. It's more of a clash, a great war between two styles with no one left to fight it. This concept looks like a utopia, and given the Fallout treatment, it would have been a utopia fallen. But that's not what Fallout 4 shows us. It's ugly, and not just because 200 years of flooding and radioactive storms have thrown it about, it's just ugly, tacky, superficial, unrealistic, commercialized, cheap-looking, shallow, unserious, overindulgent, disposable, cartoonish, plastic, and plastic. Fallout 4 doesn't just make use of googie, it is googie. The streamlinification of Fallout. It's like the base of the strat, unnecessary and doesn't even bother to explain itself. It's there to be enjoyed, there to be looked at while you fly through a world of other games trying to grab your attention at 40 miles an hour. No permanence, just spectacle. Not a dream realized, but a dream sold.